I am the daughter of the wolf chieftain, yet the only one who cannot become a wolf. They call me human. This word is neutral to others, but in my family, it is shame. My father says I am his mistake with the human woman. My stepmother looks at me with a shame she dares not speak aloud. I desperately want to escape, even if it is just to go to the university furthest from the wolf pack. But the moment I received that rejection letter, fate began to stir. Tonight, my father summoned the entire pack, and I, this human rejected by them, am on the list. If you ask my parents how they would describe my brother, they would tell you he was a born leader. Fearless, valiant, the kind of person who was born to command an army. If you ask them how they would describe my sister, they will rave about her gentle nature and selfless heart. But what about me? My parents only ever used one word to describe me: person. You might think the word human wouldn't be used to insult someone, but for some reason, I've carried its shameful mark my entire life. When I was 12, I appeared at my father's doorstep, the wolf pack leader. He told the other wolves that I was there because of my human mother's failure. I was forcibly placed in the pack, literally. But as the only human there, I was immediately ostracized. I couldn't run, wrestle, or transform into a wolf like the other neighborhood children. I would never find my mate, never experience the instantaneous, genuine love between partners. I am still the cub of the pack leader. While this might protect me from bullying, it doesn't mean I can integrate into the pack. The werewolf world is completely different from the human world, and in their eyes, my humanity is a weakness. My father never told me he was ashamed of me, but I could still sense his disappointment. A disappointment that permeated the air whenever he referred to me as his human daughter, or explained that I was the product of his brief affair with a human woman 18 years ago. My stepmother, my father's soulmate, did try hard to integrate me into the group. She was the perfect Luna, gentle and kind. But I could still sense her shame for me. If anything proved her family wasn't perfect, I was the living proof. Every time she looked at me, she was reminded of her partner's betrayal. They tried their best, but ultimately, they couldn't create a perfect family. I lived under my father's roof, among his wolves, in the world of werewolves for 6 years. But I had long since accepted the fact that I could never truly belong there. That is what I was thinking at the time. Although I planned to go to college far away from the wolves, far from the wolves that wouldn't accept me, my life was about to change drastically. Some force, or rather someone, was about to ensure that there was enough room for an ordinary little human like me in the werewolf world. Dear Clark Bellevue, after careful review, we regret to inform you that we are currently unable to admit you to the University of Florida. We appreciate the time and effort you have put into your application, but unfortunately, the large number of applicants and limited enrollment this year made it difficult for us to make a decision. We believe you will achieve excellent results in your studies. We wish you all the best in your studies. Sincerely, Director of Admissions, University of Florida Faye, read the rejection letter at least 5 times, my eyes scanning the screen rapidly, hoping to find some clue. Unfortunately, there was nothing hidden. It was just another generic rejection letter from other universities. They simply didn't want me. My final year of high school was drawing to a close, and despite applying to countless universities, I had only received 3 rejection letters and 1 waitlist offer. Most of the schools I applied to were state universities, and my academic records were pretty good. But to be honest, the only thing I cared about was finding a university far from home. So far that I wouldn't go home on weekends or most holidays, so I'd have an excuse not to go home. Given that I live in cold and rainy Washington, Florida's sunny and far-away climate would be perfect for me. But it seems unlikely that this will happen, Clark. I was wallowing in self-pity when I was suddenly interrupted by my sister Lily's shout. Before I could even exit my Gmail page, Lily burst into my room without a word. "Clark, I've been on the phone with you for 5 minutes," she sighed, leaning against my doorframe. "Are you watching some cheesy reality show, or did you not even hear me?" Although we are half-tan sisters, Lily and I don't look alike at all. She is tall, with fair skin and long, smooth, flowing blonde hair. She and my brother both inherited my father's bright blue eyes. Her eyes are her most captivating feature. It is as if there is always a pair of eyes trying to peek out from behind her. "I'm sorry, Lil. I didn't mean to ignore you," I said. "What's wrong?" Her deep blue eyes narrowed, but she seemed to accept my apology. "Dad wants to see us. There is a big meeting at the Wolfpack camp tonight, and many people will be there." I frowned. Wolfpack meetings weren't uncommon for us, but I usually didn't need to attend. As the only human resident of the Blackfang pack, I wasn't very involved in pack affairs. I couldn't transform, which meant I couldn't participate in patrols or defend the pack. "Why is Dad looking for me?" I asked. "I'm not sure," Lily shrugged. "He just asked me to pick you up. I'm sure there's a reason, otherwise Dad wouldn't have brought you. Let's go." Lily didn't waste any more time waiting for me, and I watched her stride confidently out of the room. Even my most favored child doesn't know why I was summoned. I suppose it must be something very important. I followed Lily out of the room, and we silently walked down the stairs. Our house was one of the largest in the wolf pack, its high ceilings and hardwood floors making it feel exceptionally spacious. A privilege of being a member of the Alpha Wolf family. Photos of Lily and my brother Sebastian hung on the walls like trophies. A picture of Lily as a child, a picture of Sebastian playing his first wolf rugby game, and a picture of Lily and her friends at their prom. As expected, Dad, Sebastian, and Grace were all waiting in the living room. Dad lay lazily in his chaise longue as if it were his throne. Grace sat on his lap, and Sebastian stood awkwardly by the fireplace. "Oh, girls, you're here," Dad said, his booming voice echoing through the room. "We're having a small group meeting tonight, and both of you need to be there." Even in his 40s, my father didn't look any older than 30. He had blonde hair and blue eyes like Lily, and his angular jaw and burly build made him look exactly like a wolf, which he was. My half-gen brother Sebastian is the same height as my father, but he inherited his chestnut brown hair from his mother, Grace. Grace, or Luna Grace, if you're not her stepdaughter, is my father's soulmate and the mother of Sebastian and Lily. She is the final piece of the puzzle in the perfect family my father built. "Why is Clark here at the meeting tonight?" Sebastian asked, glancing at me as he did so. He meant no harm. Like me, he knew I was rarely needed, or rather, unwelcome at Wolfpack meetings. "We'll discuss this in the meeting," Dad said, standing up with Grace. "Is everyone ready? The meeting is about to start. We should go." We all nodded. "Oh, Clark, honey," Grace interrupted from my dad. "Are you sure you don't want to change? This outfit might be a bit too casual for a Wolfpack meeting." I glanced down at my jeans and black T-Dan shirt. Not exactly glamorous, but neither were the others dressed up much. Sebastian wore a T-Gen shirt and shorts, while Lily stood out in a denim skirt and some kind of ruffled top. "If I could, I'd wear this," I said. Grace nodded, but I could feel her gaze sweep over my clothes again. I thought to myself, I'm not going to be the center of attention here. The elders will be busy taking care of Dad. The Wolfpack warriors will be staring at Lily's ass, and any unmarried girl will be flirting with my brother. If I'm lucky, I can blend into the background. Frankly, that is exactly what I'm aiming for in these kinds of events. "Stop dawdling. Let's go," Dad muttered, taking Grace's hand. He led the way out of the house, with Seb, Lily, and I following behind like puppies. And I'm not kidding. We walked in silence, and I took the opportunity to admire the scenery along the way. Our wolf pack lives in its own forest community, which means most places, such as the pack's habitat, are within walking distance. Residents' houses line one side of the street, but if you continue walking, you'll eventually encounter the pack's grocery store and medical clinic. Pack members can leave at any time, but this arrangement in our community means you rarely need to leave. Moreover, even if you really need to do this, you are still accountable to the guards at the border. They won't trap you inside, but they will make it harder for you to sneak out. The small residential area in the community is only a small part of the wolf pack. Most of our territory is woodland, where the wolves can run, play, and change habitats at any time. This is an ideal environment for werewolves, as someone who considers myself not a fan of outdoor activities. Living an hour's drive from the nearest town is hardly a good thing. I'm certainly not trapped, but sometimes living in Blacktooth territory does feel restrictive. The entire manor is guarded and patrolled, making it difficult for me to come and go freely. Moreover, because I am not a werewolf, I cannot transform and run through the woods on all fours like my brothers and sisters when I want to get some fresh air. Whether I like it or not, I live in a wolf's den. Chapter 2, Those who are excluded will always mourn. Oscar Wilde, the journey to the Wolfpack camp was short. In less than 10 minutes, we passed through its enormous entrance hall. The Wolfpack camp is the largest dwelling on our territory, capable of accommodating nearly 1,000 people when necessary, as it is used for meetings, gatherings, or other wolf activities. Its design resembles a giant log cabin, with chairs, sofas, beanbag chairs, and other furniture scattered throughout the living room. There were people there as soon as we entered. They're everywhere. The elders of our pack sat on sofas, sipping coffee and chatting. Several couples nestled together on armchairs and chairs, completely absorbed in their own worlds, oblivious to everything around them. Some of the pack's warriors stood in small groups, laughing and talking. Most of them were single or had left their partners at home. As soon as my father entered the room, it fell silent. All eyes were on us. The conversation stopped abruptly, and many people bowed their heads in respect to him. I could feel the curious glances around me. Most of them, probably like me, were wondering why a human girl was at the meeting. Grace went to a sofa and sat down with several elders, while my father and Sebastian occupied the most prominent spots in the room. Lily and I each found an empty sofa and sat down, but she had already begun inviting her friends over. Unlike me, my sister is a social butterfly. As the daughter of the pack leader, she is practically a princess. Girls all want to be her friend, while boys pray they'll be lucky enough to marry Lily. Lily hasn't met her partner yet, but she is 18, and anything is possible. Werewolves can recognize their partners at 16, and most find one within a year or two. By 18 or 19, most of the single werewolves I've met are eager to find their true love. They want to get married, have children, and start procreation immediately. For a moment, I even wondered if Lily might become like that too. Would my stubborn, kind, gen-hearted sister also turn into a docile, pregnant wife by the end of the year? People usually think that werewolves become like that, but for some reason, the thought made me uneasy. Attention, everyone. My dad clapped his hands, even though all eyes were on him. I've called you all here today to discuss something important. Something that has already begun to affect our wolf pack. As their father spoke, their older brother stood firmly beside him, arms crossed over his chest, ready to support whatever their father said. The rejected always mourn. Oscar Wilde, the journey to the Wolfpack camp was short. In less than 10 minutes, we passed through its enormous entrance hall. The Wolfpack camp is the largest dwelling on our territory, capable of accommodating nearly 1,000 people when necessary, as it is used for meetings, gatherings, or other wolf activities. Its design resembles a giant log cabin, with chairs, sofas, beanbag chairs, and other furniture scattered throughout the living room. There were people there as soon as we entered. They're everywhere. The elders of our pack sat on sofas, sipping coffee and chatting. Several couples nestled together on armchairs and chairs, completely absorbed in their own worlds, oblivious to everything around them. Some of the pack's warriors stood in small groups, laughing and talking. Most of them were single or had left their partners at home. As soon as my father entered the room, it fell silent, and all eyes were on us. The conversation stopped abruptly, and many people bowed their heads in respect to him. I could feel the curious glances around me. Most of them, probably like me, were wondering why a human girl was at the meeting. Grace went to a sofa and sat down with several elders, while my father and Sebastian occupied the most prominent spots in the room. Lily and I each found an empty sofa and sat down, but she had already begun inviting her friends over. Unlike me, My sister is a social butterfly. As the daughter of the pack leader, she is practically a princess. Girls all want to be her friend, while boys pray they'll be lucky enough to marry Lily. Lily hasn't met her partner yet, but she is 18, and anything is possible. Werewolves can recognize their partners at 16, and most find one within a year or two. By 18 or 19, most of the single werewolves I've met are eager to find their true love. They want to get married, have children, and start procreation immediately. For a moment, I even wondered if Lily might become like that too. Would my stubborn, kind, Jan-hearted sister also turn into a docile, pregnant wife by the end of the year? People usually think that werewolves become like that, but for some reason, the thought made me uneasy. Attention, everyone. My dad clapped his hands even though all eyes were on him. I've called you all here today to discuss something important. Something that has already begun to affect our wolf pack. When Dad was speaking, his older brother stood firmly beside him, arms crossed over his chest, ready to support whatever Dad said. You may have heard rumors from other wolf packs that tensions in the werewolf world are escalating, the father said. The two largest wolf packs in the country, the Crescent and the Pacific Rock Wolves, have been on the brink of war for the past 2 months. If their conflict escalates, it won't just be bloodshed within their own packs. Both packs have allies across the country. We even have a long-standing alliance with the Pacific Rock Wolves, and if they need our help, I will have to send warriors to meet them. I could hear several gasps of cold air coming from the room, and some of the older people started talking in hushed tones. How exactly did this conflict begin? Why did the Crescent Wolf Pack and the Pacific Rock Wolf Pack clash? A young male warrior suddenly asked from one side of the room. The father sighed. The cause of this is the same as most conflicts. The wolves are trying to take over what doesn't belong to them. The new leader of the Crescent Wolf Pack is ambitious and has been expanding his territory since he took over. For the past few months, they have been quietly encroaching on the territory of the Pacific Rock Wolf Pack. Although I had heard my father complain about this conflict to Sebastian or Grace at home before, this was the first time I had heard such a detailed description. Actually, it wasn't anything unusual. I'd heard countless stories of wolf packs fighting over territory or waging war against each other since I'd lived in the werewolf world. Werewolves are extremely possessive of everything, including their territory. However, this was the first time I had encountered a conflict that could potentially affect my pack. My father was an excellent pack leader, who during his reign always strived to avoid getting involved in territorial disputes and other conflicts with neighboring packs. I know this sounds worrying, the father continued, but I don't think it will escalate into war. The King of Alpha is aware of the dispute and doesn't want it to turn into an out-Dan control war. Both sides are trying to form an alliance. He believes that if they meet in a neutral zone with the King of Alpha in his presence, they can reach an understanding. Ah, the mysterious and powerful King of Alpha. At least this guy has finally begun to fulfill his duties. Ever since I entered the world of werewolves, I've heard about the existence of Alpha Wolf King. I've never seen him in person, not even a picture of him. But as far as I know, he is the closest thing to a monarch among werewolves, and a celebrity. He has his own territory and pack of wolves, but he rules over all the wolves. He is the leader of the pack, the king who reigns over all the wolves. His word is final, and although he usually doesn't interfere in the affairs of the pack, he will intervene in special circumstances. For example, to prevent war. The last time I heard that the current pack leader was about the same age as my father, but he was grooming his son to succeed him before he died. I also know very little about the leader's son, but then again, I'm not an encyclopedia of werewolf knowledge. Apart from some scattered tidbits I heard at home, and the simple explanations my father gave me about wolf pack hierarchy and the biology of wolves when I first started living with him. My understanding of wolves remains very limited. That's wonderful news, said an old man with a wrinkled face, clutching his coffee cup as if it were his lifeline. The Wolf King will surely appease both packs. Wolf King, what else do you have to worry about? My dad sighed, crossed his arms, and said, "There is one more thing. In fact, It is the main reason I've gathered so many of you here tonight." He briefly glanced at me. "It looks like the exciting part is about to begin." The Wolf King saw this as an opportunity to strengthen the alliance and mutual understanding between all wolf packs, not just the Crescent and Pacific Rock wolves. He asked each pack leader to send their cubs as diplomats. Lily took a deep breath beside me, and I saw Sebastian's eyes widen. I used to see my father travel for diplomatic meetings often, but I never saw my siblings travel for work. Most wolf packs prefer to deal with the current alpha, rather than the future alpha. "Why alpha wolf cubs?" the elder asked. "Sebastian is still several years away from succeeding you. What good will it do us to send these young wolves?" Several people in the room nodded in agreement, and I couldn't refute the elder's logic. Unless my father died unexpectedly, Sebastian wouldn't be the pack leader for the next few years, so sending Lily would be pointless. As a she-dan wolf, she might have a small chance of becoming leader if both my father and Sebastian died, but only after she proved herself to the pack. I think the only advantage is that if Lily and Sebastian have to go on some diplomatic mission, I can have the house all to myself and use Lily's wardrobe at will. The Wolf King believes that for the future of the werewolf world, it is crucial that they learn how to coexist peacefully now, before they are given real power and titles. He believes that teaching them how to conduct diplomacy may prevent future conflicts like the ones we are experiencing now from happening again. "Is that all?" the old man asked. "Well," my father said, and I could tell he was reluctant to continue. "This is his reason for giving us alphas, and I believe it explains why he wants future alphas to stay there. However, I always feel he has other motives. The king has requested that all the children of the alphas be brought here, including our daughters. His son has just turned 25 and hasn't found a partner yet. I think this is another opportunity for the prince to find a partner." "Are they all daughters of Alpha Academy?" another elder asked, and almost everyone in the room turned their gaze to me. "No, I will absolutely not be included. I am human, which means I am automatically excluded from most werewolf activities, especially diplomatic werewolf pack meetings." My father turned to look at me, his eyes filled with worry. "Unfortunately, yes, this means he also wants to see my daughter, Clark. She will be attending the meeting with her siblings." "Oh no, werewolves are much more common than you think." Daniel Pinkwater Fey whispers spread rapidly throughout the room like wildfire. I couldn't hear the whispers of the other wolf pack members, so I could only try to stay calm. Do I really want to attend a very important diplomatic conference where all the attendees are grumpy people? No. Do I still have a choice in this matter? No, while I'm not an encyclopedia of werewolf knowledge. I do know that the Werewolf King's word is final. If he invites you to a meeting, you must attend. "All right, everyone quiet down." Dad's voice echoed through the room, and the noise immediately ceased. "I've contacted one of King Alpha's informants to inquire about Clark's attendance. The king knows she's human, but she's also Alpha's daughter, so he's unwilling to make an exception." I didn't know whether to be angry or flattered. On one hand, I was touched by my father's efforts in helping me out of this predicament. On the other hand, I was angry that he hadn't told me anything. Since he had had ample time to contact the King of Alpha, he clearly knew about the meeting long ago. So why did I only find out now? Just give them a heads down up, that is all. But a glance at Lily's pale face reminded me that I wasn't the only one kept in the dark. My two siblings were also completely unaware of the meeting. "Lil, are you all right?" I asked my sister, gently patting her shoulder. Her face was still pale, and her bright blue eyes were staring blankly at her knees. I touched her, and she looked up, adjusting her expression. "I'm fine, don't worry," she said. I didn't quite believe her, but I didn't want to pressure her, especially here. In front of the other contestants, I looked up at Sebastian. He looked serious, but even through the room, I could see his furrowed brow. He was worried. He, like Lily and me, was involved in this matter. Although his presence at the diplomatic conference made more sense, he was a candidate for the next Alpha. "The meeting notice was very rushed," Dad continued. Next week, I'll be sending Sebastian, Lily, and Clark. I can't go with them, but I'll send a few wolf warriors to protect them. I'll speak privately with the selected people this week. Also, Healer Len told me that we're running low on some medical supplies. The rest of the meeting flew by, with Dad merely handling routine matters. Although the topic shifted, I still felt many eyes on me. After Dad finished speaking, most of the wolves started talking to each other, just as they had been doing before we arrived. Lily immediately disappeared into the crowd of her friends, leaving me awkwardly alone on the sofa. I've always had some social anxiety, but after Dad announced that big news, I felt even less inclined to interact with people. "Clark? Are you worried?" A hoarse voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up and saw an elder male walking towards me. I recognized him. He was one of the oldest members of our pack, but I couldn't recall his name for a moment. "Well, I'm just a little surprised," I confessed. "I understand why the king wants future alpha werewolves to stay there. Even his son's future alpha daughter. I just feel like my presence is somewhat superfluous." I tried to choose my words carefully. Although the elder's eyes were kind, he was, after all, a werewolf, and I didn't want to speak ill of the king too much. "If I had to guess why the king insisted on keeping you there, even though you are just a mortal," the elder said, "my guess is that he didn't want to take any risks." "What do you mean? What risks are you taking?" "About his son Clark," he said, a playful smile on his face. "Your father himself said that this meeting was half diplomatic, and the other half was to bring all the alpha princesses together and give the prince an opportunity to find a mate." "That is right, but I'm still a human being. Doesn't that automatically disqualify me from finding a partner?" A slight smile played on the old man's lips. "Not entirely, Clark. Your situation is unique. You don't have wolf genes, but the blood of the alpha werewolf still flows in your veins. While it is unlikely you'll find a mate, let alone become the future alpha werewolf king, there is still a glimmer of hope, though it is slim. It feels like my world underwent two massive changes overnight. Years ago, when my father taught me werewolf biology, he never mentioned the possibility that I might have a mate. He explained that mating occurs between two wolves. Their inner beasts call to each other. This makes me feel very relieved because I no longer have to worry about spending the rest of my life tied to some territorial and domineering wolf. "How is that possible? A wolf and a human mating?" I asked. "I've never heard of that. I always thought mating was the result of two people's inner beasts choosing each other. But someone like me doesn't have a wolf inside me." The elder nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, that's usually how it is," he said. "Two inner wolves call to each other. Our inner wolves have intuition. They can tell at a glance who is the best match for us. That's why partners recognize each other on their first meeting. This connection is formed instantly and is irreversible. However, this is extremely rare. I have witnessed instances of humans mating with wolves in my lifetime, but only a handful. As I said, it is very rare. There is a risk in mating with a human. You may end up having a child with wolf blood but lacking true wolf genes. Like me." "Yes, and most humans are simply not strong enough to survive in this world. They don't understand our group mentality. Most wolves understand this. Seeking a strong mate. A mate capable of producing strong offspring is our nature. But in very rare cases, a wolf may deem a human worthy of mating. I'm not entirely sure why. It is beyond my comprehension. Only a wolf's instincts can determine who is a suitable mate. But as far as I know, humans and wolf mating is extremely difficult. Why? Werewolves spend their entire lives learning how to build partnerships and crave them. Their wolfish nature naturally draws them to partners. They constantly feel this connection and cannot bear separation. This is why there is no divorce or separation in our world. The desire for a partner is so strong that no wolf can imagine being separated from their mate. But humans do not have this wolfish nature, and they do not experience the same partnership. I am not sure if they feel this way, but even if they do, it is completely different from how wolves feel. And from what I have seen, human couples interact in a very different way than ordinary couples." I asked, The older man gave a wry smile. Growing up in this world, you should know how possessive wolves are, especially male wolves, he continued. Most wolves are born with a strong sense of territory towards their mates. Protecting and defending their territory is in our nature. The higher the wolf's status, the stronger its possessiveness. The alpha wolf is the most possessive. And although I've never seen a wolf king or prince, I guess they are even more possessive than ordinary alpha wolves. You also know that humans are much more vulnerable than werewolves. Humans' senses are not as sharp as humans. They are more easily injured, their wounds heal more slowly, and they are more prone to illness. Having such a vulnerable mate would make any wolf uneasy. Their inherent possessiveness and protectiveness would be amplified tenfold. Decades ago, one of our pack's warriors had a human mate. He was worried about her almost constantly, even when she was perfectly fine. He wouldn't let her go out alone. He almost never let her. Her cook, he was too worried she would cut herself with a knife or burn herself on the stove. Even if he thought she just had a cold, he would keep her in bed for days. He shook his head, sighed, and said, "That poor girl, I really don't understand how she got through all that." I couldn't see my own face, but I must have looked terrified because the old man placed his hand reassuringly on my shoulder. "Don't worry, Clark," he said, patting my arm. "I didn't mean to scare you. Like I told you before, humans and wolf mates are extremely rare, almost impossible. Your chances of becoming a wolf mate are practically zero." Impossible, that is right. Clark, there is no need to make a mountain out of a molehill. You've heard him say it. It is almost impossible for humans to have partners. And even if they do, it is likely to be with extremely special people. I took a deep breath and tried to remember the idea. Everything will be all right. I definitely don't have a partner. The concept of a soulmate is beautiful, and it sounds romantic when it is discussed in movies or songs. But in reality, I think it is terrifying. Vanessa Paradise, I barely slept that night. When I finally fell asleep, I dreamed of a man. I couldn't see his face or hear his voice, but I could see his hands. They were large, with long, flexible fingers, like a pianist's hands, and you could see the veins clearly from the knuckles to the arms. I could still make out his forearm, or more precisely, the large tattoo on his left forearm. The tattoo design resembled a bird, but the body was that of a different animal, perhaps a leopard or a lion. The shrill alarm clock woke me up before I could even look at it properly. Clark. As if the shrill beeping of the alarm clock wasn't enough. "I have another alarm clock today, Lily." "Clark, turn that thing off. It has been ringing for over a minute." What a perfect way to start a Monday morning. I don't even need to open my eyes to know that Lily is standing in the doorway, glaring at me. Everyone in the family knows she hates waking up even more than I do. We've all experienced her morning rage more than once. But I and my loud alarm clock are always her target. Okay, I'll get on it right away," I mumbled sleepily, clumsily fiddling with my phone until I pressed the snooze button. I rubbed my face and then opened one eye. Just as I expected, Lily's sharp gaze seemed capable of shattering glass. "Why did you set the alarm so loudly?" Lily asked sharply. "I can hear it from a mile away. It is hurting my ears." I was half asleep and didn't have the energy to argue with her. And even if I did, it wouldn't have mattered. "I'm sorry, Lil," I yawned. I was sleeping very soundly, you know. Not everyone has ears as sharp as a wolf's. "Whatever," Lily rolled her eyes. "Get up. I'm meeting Ashley at the lockers this morning. So if you're not downstairs in 20 minutes, I'm leaving." Without waiting for my reply, she stomped her foot and left. Although I wanted to stay in bed a little longer, I knew Lily's threat wasn't unfounded. If I wasn't downstairs in time, she'd drive me down to school alone in her Jeep. We shared a Jeep, but she drove it far more often than I did. This girl's extracurricular activities were as colorful as her book collecting. If it wasn't cheerleading or martial arts training, she was constantly on the go between parties and gatherings with friends. To avoid falling behind or being forced to walk to school, I got dressed as quickly as possible. I chose my favorite worn Dan-out jeans, a blue vest, and my favorite cotton zip tan-up hoodie. I didn't put on makeup, just tied my thick red hair into a ponytail and took one last look at myself in the mirror. My hair is probably the prettiest part of my body, though it also makes me stand out from the rest of my family. My hair and eyes are exactly like my mother's dark brown eyes and a head of long, frizzy red hair that I can never comb properly. In fact, it is not just my eyes and hair. My skin is the same as my mother's. We both get sunburned very easily and have a few freckles on our faces. When I was little, and I still lived with my mother, people often said we looked exactly alike. Later, when I moved in with my father, he said something similar. He said I was practically a carbon copy of my mother. I still remember the first time I met my father. I was 11 years old that year. Although my mother never mentioned that we were going to visit my father, she drove us to his house. She just told me she was leaving for a while and I would be staying with relatives. That is normal. When my mom said she was leaving for a while, she really meant she had a new boyfriend, and they were going to elope to who knows where and do drugs together. Even though I was only 11 at the time, I knew this kind of thing would happen. And I also knew that the friends my mom entrusted me to when she wasn't home weren't aunties and uncles at all. We ended up at my dad's house instead. I thought he was just another friend of my mom's. He looked shocked when he saw my mom. His face turned pale, and he stammered as he invited us in. Grace was there too. We were making chocolate chip cookies together in the kitchen, while my parents were talking quietly in another room. They stayed there for a while, long enough for the cookies to bake, and then we took them out of the oven and ate them. When they finally returned to the room, Dad still had a shocked look on his face and looked like he was about to cry. This time, it was my turn to be pulled aside. He explained to me that he was my dad and that I would be living with him from now on. He said Mom had to leave for a while to take care of some things, and I wouldn't be able to see her for a while. He is right. 7 years have passed, and I still haven't seen my mother again. She disappeared that night, and since then, my father and Grace have been the only parents I know. I took a deep breath, turned away, and stopped looking in the mirror. I tried hard not to think about my mother or that night, but sometimes those thoughts would still quietly creep into my mind. I was very confused at the time, even though my father tried his best to explain to me, an 11 years old. He was very angry after that night. Not at me, but at my mother. My mother had never mentioned me to him, so he didn't know I existed until that night. He told me several times that if he had known I existed earlier, I would have lived with him long ago. But since he didn't know, we could only try to make up for the lost time. I had never heard of him before. I asked my mother about my father's whereabouts several times, but she always avoided the topic. She told me that he wasn't around, that he was in a completely different world that I didn't need to go into. To be fair, she was right. My father lived in a completely different world. Later, I learned from Sebastian that I was the product of my parents' one-night stand while they were drunk. That was the only time he ever betrayed Grace. That night, he ran into my mother at the bar and went home with her. He had already confessed to Grace years before I showed up at their door. They were friends, so of course she forgave him, though I doubt my presence made her forget. Not only do I look like my mother, but my existence is a constant reminder that Grace's relationship with her father was not perfect, and that her father did something terrible that caused great harm. Grace never said these words to me, but I could still sense it. She tried her best to integrate me into the family, but sometimes I would still see her looking at me with a frustrated expression. I took a deep breath and put on my coat. Clark, that is a great way to start Monday. Constantly rehashing the past until you get frustrated yourself. Clark, ultimatum. I'm leaving right now. Coming, wait! I grabbed my backpack and ran up the stairs 2 steps at a time. Lily stood at the front door, holding the keys, her face still showing that angry expression. Didn't I tell you I had to see Ashley early today? She muttered as we left. I didn't see her all weekend. If I leave next week, she'll have to take my place as cheerleader, which isn't easy. So, as I climbed into the Jeep, Lily scolded me for being late, and then we drove off to school. I was a very difficult child to manage when I was young. Olivia Wilde Faye, Do we have a biology exam today? Lily asked as she drove. Yeah, I shrugged. It depends on the wolf's anatomy and what genetic factors affect the size of a person's wolf form. Oh no, Lily cursed. I completely forgot about it. Looks like I'll have to copy Brody's. He'll definitely let me copy it. I'm sure he's obsessed with me. Every time I walk past him, I can see him grinning and drooling. I rolled my eyes, amused. But Lily was right. Brody was indeed infatuated with her. Every time she walked by, he would drool like a dog, or more like a werewolf in heat. Ugh, I'm definitely not in the mood for exams or school today. Remember when I mentioned that the wolf pack has its own general store and infirmary? Well, that is not all on the wolf pack territory. We also have our own school, Blacktooth Elementary School. Here is the problem. When you have hundreds of teenage werewolves who are abnormally emotional and can transform at will, you can't send them all to public schools. Sooner or later, someone will transform in front of humans, exposing the werewolf's existence to the world. It is said that hundreds of years ago, a former wolf pack leader enacted a law stipulating that every wolf pack must provide education for its cubs. Of course, the wolf pack will devise its own curriculum. Instead of teaching teenage werewolves calculus, why not teach them warrior training? Instead of going through the trouble of learning world history, why not teach werewolves world history? You can still take most of the basic courses at other schools, such as math, history, science, and English. But most of those courses have werewolf elements. This customized course is very meaningful for werewolves, but unfortunately, as the only human resident in the Black Fang wolf pack, ever since I started living with my father, he insisted that I, my siblings, and the other members of the wolf pack go to werewolf school. I resisted for a long time. Living with my father had severed most of my connection with the human world, and the last thing I wanted was to leave my human friends. We argued for a while, but in the end he got what he wanted. I tried to stay in touch with some human friends, but those friendships eventually faded because there was no way to actually see them. You're unusually quiet this morning, Lily said, glancing at me from the driver's seat. You're more sullen than usual. Feeling down. Yes, you're sulking again, she said. I can always tell when you're sulking. And by the way, you're sulking most of the time. So, what's wrong this time? Are you worried about that important diplomatic meeting next week? I'm not worried, I replied. I have nothing to worry about. Unlike you and Sebastian, am I scared? A little. I can't think of a better way to spend the weekend than being locked in a stuffy room with a pack of angry wolves. Lily smiled sarcastically at my last sentence. I believe you'll be fine, she said, then paused. Actually, I'm a little scared too. I looked at Lily in surprise. Her gaze was fixed on the road, but from her furrowed brow and the way she bit her lip, I knew she was telling the truth. She was very worried. Really? Why? Lily sighed, seemingly unsure whether she wanted to open up. Promise me you won't tell anyone, not even Sebastian, certainly. I don't know. I've been thinking. My partner is very likely to be there, she said. I know my partner isn't with the Black Fang pack, otherwise I would have seen him already, so he must belong to another pack. And this weekend, all the future alpha wolves, not including the pack members they bring, will be there. That increases my chances of meeting my partner by at least Bafinjawushir. Maybe more. As she spoke, I saw Lily's knuckles gripping the steering wheel tightly until they turned white. I slowly processed what she said. Lily and I rarely talk about partners. As werewolves, we both know she has partners. Both she and Sebastian do. Over the years, I've heard her fantasize with her friends about who her partner might be, but she has never brought it up with me privately. Are you nervous, thinking about possibly meeting your significant other this weekend? I asked. I don't know, Lily said. It just feels like time is going by too fast. That's all. Yes, that's true, I admitted. It's okay if you're not ready yet. That's normal. I mean, we haven't even graduated high school yet. My words not only failed to comfort her, but instead angered Lily. I never said I wasn't ready, she snapped. I just said it looks a little fast now. I know when I'm ready. I'm 18, and I have alpha blood in my veins. Whoever my destiny is, I'm fully prepared." She frowned, and I heard the steering wheel click under her fingers. "I didn't say you weren't ready, Lil," I replied. "I just said it's okay if you're not ready yet. That's all." Lily rolled her eyes, but I could tell she loosened her grip on the steering wheel. "Whatever," she snapped. "I don't know why I'm telling you this, and you don't need to worry about it. You're human. You'll never find a partner." The sisterly bond came to an end. Although her words were clearly insulting, I felt a sense of relief. She was right. I am a human being, which means my life will not be altered by making eye contact with strangers. Before I could even think of a response that wouldn't further provoke her, Lily had already driven into the school. She parked in her usual spot, a privilege of being Alpha's daughter. Lily stormed off to find her friend almost immediately, but I leisurely got out of the Jeep. It was almost time for class, and students were pouring into the large brick school building. This is the thing I hate most about school: the noise. I may not have superhuman hearing, but it still feels like my ears are being attacked. There is a constant cacophony of noise all around. In the parking lot, a shirtless man was being encouraged by his friends to transform into a wolf. A few steps away, a couple was having a heated argument. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I saw the girl pointing at someone else while the boy glared at her with bared teeth. Next to them, a couple was making out passionately. Going to a school full of werewolves is an overload on the senses. "Clark, take a deep breath." Just like every school morning, I took a few deep breaths to calm myself down, got out of the car, and joined the crowd. Nobody gave me a second glance, but I didn't care. Time to go to my first class of the day, soldier training. Technology and self-gen confidence are an invincible army. George Herbert Fay, keep running. I'm going to run another 20 laps before get out of class ends. You might think that if being human brings me any advantage, it is probably that it exempts me from warrior training, a mandatory course for training young werewolves in combat skills. But you're wrong. Although I can't become a werewolf, and will never become a wolfpack warrior, I still have to participate in warrior training with others. I tried countless times to persuade my dad to let me skip school, but he was adamant. He felt that this would allow me to integrate into the group and experience being powerful like a wolf. Unfortunately, it often gives me the opposite feeling. For werewolves, running 20 laps around the large open area where we practiced was nothing. But for a human who didn't consider himself an athlete, it was hell. My classmates kept passing me on the track, laughing and talking as they ran, as if it were just an easy jog. My legs were burning, and every breath felt like a weight of lead pressing down on my lungs. I was more than 2 laps behind the others, but luckily, I wasn't alone. Right beside me, my best friend Kara was running alongside me. Unlike me, she wasn't out of breath. If she hadn't been deliberately keeping up with me, she probably would have already been 2 laps ahead of me, just like the other wolves. "I can't believe you actually met Alpha King," she said, giving me a playful glare. Her curly hair bounced as she ran, and not a single bead of sweat glistened on her dark skin. We'd been friends since freshman year, and she was one of the few people who didn't avoid me. "Well, who knows if I'll actually meet that guy face to face," I replied breathlessly. "It's just a diplomatic meeting." "Yes, but this is a diplomatic meeting, and the participants are some of the most powerful alpha werewolves in the world." "Oh, I know," I chuckled, panting, "but I'm not sure if it's a good thing. A bunch of alpha men in one room. It's bound to turn into a battle of titans." "Probably," Kara said with a laugh. "I'm still quite jealous. I wonder if you'll be able to meet Prince Griffin. I've heard he's incredibly handsome." "Oh, really? My father thinks this meeting is a smokescreen, a way for the prince to find his mate," I told her, and Carla's eyes widened. "Really? Ugh, I'm so jealous right now. Just think how lucky that girl is to be his partner." Kara continued her eloquent narration, but I suddenly stopped in my tracks. "Wait, Griffin." An image flashed through my mind, a huge griffin tattooed on an arm with olive skin. "Don't worry, Clark. It is just a coincidence. Kara stopped running as soon as she noticed I had stopped. Are you all right? Yeah, I'm fine, I said, just catching my breath. But you said his name is Griffin. She raised an eyebrow at me, but nodded nonetheless. Yes, Prince Griffin, didn't you know? You know me. I grinned. I don't really care about werewolf gossip. Yeah, Carla rolled her eyes. I heard he's incredibly handsome, but he hasn't found a partner yet. He's been looking for 9 years. Can you imagine? I've only been looking for 2 years, and I already feel like I'm going crazy. I can't even imagine life without a partner. Although I've never personally experienced that attraction, I know that werewolves can recognize their mates at a glance by the age of 16. Most werewolves find a mate within 2 to 3 years. Very few werewolves go beyond that time without finding one. He must be desperate, I said, especially if he gets the king to gather all the alpha princesses in one place. Do you think this will work? Kara asked. Then her eyes widened. What if he finds a partner? Wait. What if Lily is his partner? I mean, that's entirely possible, Kara continued. Your sister does indeed have alpha blood, as does Prince Griffin. They are both very powerful. Your sister will become a true queen. I tried to imagine Lily sitting on her throne wearing a crown, but the thought made me feel very uncomfortable. I couldn't explain why, but the feeling made me very uneasy. Maybe, who knows? I shrugged, trying to banish the image from my mind. Girls, what are you talking about? You should be running, not gossiping. A few feet away, our coach, Beta Jones, pointed at me and Kara. He was a middle-aged man with a buzz cut and a long scar on his face. Sorry, Beta, Kara responded. Clark had trouble breathing, so we took a break. Even from a distance, I could see the anger on Beta Jones's face. Clark, I've been teaching you for over 3 years, he sighed. And your physical condition is still as bad as it was on the first day. His voice was loud, and the other students laughed. My cheeks flushed involuntarily, but I didn't reply to Beta Jones. Although no one directly bullies me, after all, I am Alpha's daughter. I know that most of my peers have 2 feelings about me. Either they find it amusing that my human body is trying so hard to keep up with them, or they pity me. I don't know which one is more embarrassing. All right, everyone. Beta Jones clapped his hands. Find a partner. We're going to start sparring. His words drew cheers from several classmates, while I stood next to Kara, trying to suppress a groan. Close combat might be fun for a werewolf, but for me, it meant I was going to get beaten up again. Hey, partner, Kara grinned, grabbing my arm. Want to use the last mat? Oak, thanks. We walked to a large mat at the far end of the field. Kara would definitely beat me black and blue, but at least the mat would cushion my fall. The others paired up, with Beta Jones standing in the center of the arena. Today, we're going to engage in close combat in human form, he said. Sometimes you might not be able to transform, so learning how to defend yourself is very important. Now, does anyone know the fastest way to kill a werewolf when it's in human form? Kara raised her hand instantly. Of course, this all-Dan-knowing lady would have the answer, which was exactly what I expected. Yes, Kara. You need a silver knife or sword to hurt a humanoid werewolf, she explained. If you stab them with a regular knife, they will heal themselves. But silver weakens us. It's the only thing that can really kill us. That's right. Beta Jones agreed, then turned to the rest of the class. It's important to remember this. No matter how good your fighting skills are, you can't kill your opponent if you don't have something like a silver blade. Now, as I said, we're focusing on hand-to-Dan hand combat today. Whoever knocks their opponent to the ground first wins. I turned to look at Kara, who was grinning at me. I bet you won't go easy on a weak human, will you? I teased, assuming a fighting stance. 对不起，克拉克，他冷笑着说。你知道我爱你，但我还是要揍你一顿。As soon as she finished speaking, my bottom was flat on the mat. No one is free, not even birds are chained to the sky. Bob Dylan when I got home from school. I still had bruises from soldier training. The house was quiet when I entered, but that wasn't unusual. Dad and Sebastian were probably dealing with the wolf pack, and Grace liked to help out at the wolf pack's nursery in the afternoons. I think this is fine. My bed is calling me. I was exhausted this morning and desperately need a nap, Clark. Just as I was about to go upstairs, a voice made me stop in my tracks. I turned around and saw Sebastian standing in the living room, his expression more serious than usual. I was surprised to find him there. Since graduating high school, Sebastian had been spending less and less time at home. My father was grooming him to succeed Alpha, which meant having Sebastian by his side almost constantly. "Yes, what is wrong? Can we talk?" he asked. His brow furrowed as he grew older. Sebastian's face seemed forever frozen in that serious and worried expression. I'm not sure if it is because he bears the heavy responsibility of becoming the next Alpha, or simply because he is the eldest son of the werewolf family. Certainly. I jumped down the last step and followed him into the living room. Is Dad home? Or is it just the two of us? No, it is just the two of us. He sat in my dad's favorite recliner, while I plopped down on the sofa. What would you like to talk about? Sebastian sighed. And I saw him point to an open envelope on the coffee table. The front is printed with the words University of Virginia. Oh no, I felt the color drain from my face instantly, and glanced again at Sebastian's serious expression. I didn't need to read the whole letter to know it was a rejection. I specifically requested that all acceptance and rejection letters be sent to my email address to avoid this situation. But it seems not every university takes this seriously. Do you want to explain what's going on? Sebastian's voice was calm and composed, but I could tell he wasn't happy. He had obviously read the letter and knew I was applying to universities all over the country. He knew I was trying to leave. I scratched the back of my neck. It's a rejection letter from a university. You know, I've been applying to colleges. It's almost application season. I thought you were going to the University of Washington and commuting from home every day, Sebastian said, crossing his arms. It is hard to explain why I lied to my dad. He has made it clear he wants me to stay close, and if I told him I applied to universities all over the country, he'd definitely try to persuade me to give up. So, I came up with a little lie. I told him I only applied to local universities where I could live at home, like the University of Washington. To be fair, I did receive an application form from the University of Washington, but I didn't fill it out. Well, you know, I've been expanding my search, I said. Sebastian, I've lived in Washington my whole life. I just want to get out and about, maybe spend some time in a sunnier place. You want to leave the group? I'm not leaving forever, I told him. Going to college out of state doesn't mean I'll never come home and reunite with the wolves. There are holidays, and we'll be together on weekends too. Sebastian, like my dad and Lily, has a pair of captivating blue eyes. The kind of eyes that make you feel like he can see right through you whenever you look into them. Anyone who knows Sebastian knows he saw right through my excuse. Please, Clark, he sighed, leaning back in his chair. We both know this isn't about you wanting to go on an adventure or sunbathe. You want to leave the wolves. You want to leave your family. His voice was filled with pain, and a wave of guilt washed over him. Sebastian's words sounded terrible. I didn't want to appear ungrateful for everything my father and the wolves had given me. Deep down, I knew that life was much better now than it had been with my mother. With her, all I had were cheap hotel rooms, fast food, and food that was passed around like candy to my aunt and uncle. I might feel like an outsider, but living with my father has always been stable. I have two clear, zen-headed and loving adults around me. I have homed and cooked meals every night, and there are no strange men loitering around. Actually, I should put it another way. There were quite a few strange men who came to talk business with my father, but none of them stared at me with the same lecherous look as my mother's ex-Dan boyfriends. Look how wonderful your life is now. Do you really want to give it all up? I forced myself to suppress my guilt. Stick to your principles, Clark. You're 18 now. You should be allowed to explore and experience the world. Most people your age aren't bound by wolves. Seb, you know I love you, I said. You, your family, even the wolves. I care about everyone, but this kind of thing happens all the time. I'm not like you. Once I graduate, there'll be nothing left for me here. What do you mean by unlike us? Sebastian narrowed his eyes, expressionless. I cursed my brother inwardly. At times like these, I wished he were easier to read, but he had learned how to hide his emotions from our father. He is different from me. I always wear my emotions on my sleeve, or more accurately, they're written all over my face. You know, I said, I'm not a werewolf, Seb. I know I'm still part of the pack, and always will be. But there's no place for me here. I won't be the leader like you, and I won't have a mate like Lily. Sooner or later, I have to leave this den. His expression fell silent for a moment. Then I saw him sigh and run his hand through his hair. My God, I'm sounding just like your dad right now, he said. Our conversation just now, Clark, I swear, I really didn't want to be your parent. A wave of sympathy washed over me, and I approached Sebastian, gently placing my hand on his arm. Although I felt out of place, I knew Sebastian's situation wasn't easy either. He was the apple of his family's eye, the eldest son, and had to live up to everyone's expectations. He bore a heavy responsibility. Yet he always gritted his teeth, silently enduring it all with a smile. It's okay. You've basically mastered Dad's eyebrows and raising technique, I joked, trying to ease the tension. Sebastian chuckled. I know you're worried about me, Seb, I said. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about college. To be honest, I know Dad would be furious if I told him, and I didn't want anyone else to lie for me. Sebastian squeezed my hand and said, Sometimes I forget that you're not bound to this world like Lily and I are, but I want you to know that this pack will always be your home. Sebastian looked up at me with a smile, and I couldn't help but hug him. Although we hadn't had many opportunities to see each other these days, feeling my brother's strong arms around me brought me immense comfort. You know your father will be furious if you tell him, right? You'd better wait until after this important diplomatic meeting. Don't worry. I plan to tell Dad after the car is cleaned up and the engine is running. Sebastian rolled his eyes with amusement, then pulled away from my embrace. He grabbed the rejection letter and crumpled it into a ball. I'll throw it away for you. Sebastian got up to leave, but before he could, a thought suddenly popped into his head. I don't know why I asked that question. Maybe it was my earlier conversation with Kara that piqued my interest, but once the words were out, I couldn't stop myself. Hey, Sebastian, how much do you know about Prince Griffin of Alpha? Sebastian's eyes widened in surprise. Clearly, he was just as shocked as I was by my question. I rarely ask questions about the werewolf world, let alone about a mysterious alpha wolf king or prince I'd never met. You mean Griffin Bardot? Sebastian asked. I've never met him. I've heard a few things about him, that's all. Why are you suddenly so curious? I didn't want to tell Sebastian that I dreamt of a man with a griffin tattoo. It might just be a random dream, and I didn't want to see Sebastian confirm it and then laugh at me. Clark, that was just a dream. It is no different from dreaming of living in a mansion made of candy canes. Don't assume that just because the guy's name is Griffin, he necessarily has a griffin tattoo. That would be too obvious. Carla talked about him all day in class, I finally said. I think he'll probably be attending the diplomatic conference. That guy's a real prince, so I guess I just don't want to embarrass myself or give him any reason to tear my throat. Sebastian seemed satisfied with this explanation. Yes, I know he's 25, Sebastian told me. He's the heir to the next Wolf King, but it might be a few years from now. I've heard he's done a lot of military and diplomatic work, been involved in fights between wolf packs, and helped resolve conflicts between them. Apparently, he's quite ruthless. I heard he beheaded someone just because they glanced at him. Wow, that sounds like a charming person. Of course, that's just a rumor, Sebastian clarified. But if it were true, I wouldn't be surprised. He is the heir to the throne of Alpha, and he can't appear weak, or someone might challenge his throne. And the fact that he hasn't found a partner yet might also be one of the reasons. What do you mean? You may not have learned this in school, but the longer a wolf is away from its mate, the more hostile and aggressive it becomes. This wolf hadn't mated for 9 years. so I'm not surprised if it had accumulated a lot of aggression. Great. Next week I'm going to share a room with a guy who'll twist someone's head off the moment they look at him. I might as well tell my dad about going to college now, because who knows if I'll come home next week. My fear was definitely written all over my face, because Sebastian quickly changed his tune, saying, "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you, but you did ask. We'll most likely run into him next week, but you'll be fine. If Dad's guess is right, he'll spend all his time looking for his partner and won't care about anything else. So don't worry." I nodded, forced a smile, and then Sebastian walked away. His words should have put my mind at ease, but why do I still feel a dull ache in my heart? A person often encounters their own destiny in the process of trying to escape it. Jean de La Fontaine, have you ever heard the old saying? It is that time flies when you're afraid of the future. Yes, there is some truth to that. The last week before Sebastian, Lily and I went on our trip seemed to slip through my fingers until the morning we boarded the plane, when I was struggling to zip up my overflowing backpack. Perhaps I should give in and just use a real suitcase. We were only planning to be away for 3 days. Today is the day we fly out. Tomorrow is a meeting, and then we'll be back the day after tomorrow morning. Simple. Just 3 days. And then I can go home, start my life afresh, and escape the endless battles with Alpha and the bachelors. Clark, hearing Lily's voice, I turned around. She stood in the doorway holding 2 dresses. "Which one is more suitable for the Alpha conference?" she asked. "You're actually asking me about the werewolf's dress code at a diplomatic meeting." That makes sense. "But I prefer the blue one," I said. "It makes your eyes look even more beautiful." A slight smile played on her lips, as if she had expected this compliment before she folded her dress and draped it over her arm. "What did you bring? What are you planning to wear to this party?" "Nothing special. I'm dressed comfortably, after all. We're going to Canada." "Whatever." Lily rolled her eyes. "Please, tell me you have clothes on for this meeting. You should wear your mint green jumpsuit. It suits your skin tone." "Oh, I haven't decided on anything yet." I scratched the back of my head. "I'm just thinking about it and will consider it later." "Clark, you're really unprepared," she scoffed. "Just because you don't know there's a dress code doesn't mean there isn't one." Before I could retort, she turned and stomped out of the room. I know she is right. I don't have to pack my own luggage. I can ask Lily, Grace, or even my dad for help. But the thought of Grace or my dad going through my clothes and telling me which outfits will make me look like a proper Alpha daughter makes me incredibly uncomfortable. Even if I try my best to disguise myself as a werewolf, I can't change the fact that I don't belong there. The moment I walk into the room, all the wolves will know. They can smell that I'm just a human. "Look at you, getting anxious again." A voice in my head, which sounded a lot like Lily's voice, said. I walked to the dressing table, sighed, took out the mint green jumpsuit, and stuffed it into my backpack. "Lily, Clark, if you don't hurry, you're going to miss your flight," Dad called from downstairs. Almost at the same time, I heard Grace's gentle voice scolding him for his inappropriate choice of words. "Coming," I replied, slinging my backpack over my shoulder. Since we were just going out today, my attire was simple. Ordinary jeans, a faded band T-Jan shirt, and a thick green military jacket. Although the leaves here are only just beginning to change color, I have no doubt that the weather in Canada will be much colder. That is where the Wolf King and his pack live, in southern Canada. Lily says that the Wolf King, his family, and his pack live in a luxurious castle or palace in the mountains. It all seemed utterly absurd at first. But then again, that guy was a genuine monarch. Why couldn't he have his own palace to rule? Alpha werewolves have always loved power, and nothing symbolizes power more than a throne. I adjusted my backpack one last time, then stepped out of the room and into the hallway. Lily was standing at the top of the stairs, struggling to carry her 3 suitcases. "Come help me," she whispered. I snatched a suitcase from her, but with a smile on my face. "Where did your wolf power go when you needed it, I teased. She glared at me, her blue eyes seeming capable of shattering glass. "It is not that I can't move them. It is just that they're too big. I can't move them all at once. We're only going for 3 days. Why are we bringing so much luggage? I need multiple options. We can't possibly put all of life into one pocket. This is a backpack, not a fanny pack. Yeah, it looks just as funny. At least I look like I'm going on a trip, and you look like you're going on a hiking trip. I rolled my eyes but didn't retaliate. We went downstairs together, and as soon as Sebastian and his father saw us, they took Lily's suitcase. Is everyone ready? Dad asked. His expression still serious. The three of us nodded. Oh, look at you all, Grace interjected from beside my father, her eyes brimming with tears. You all look so grown up. Mom, we absolutely have to. Sebastian was about to speak when my father's cold gaze instantly stopped him. I know this is cheesy, she said, wiping away her tears. She turned to Sebastian. It feels like just yesterday I was teaching you to walk, and now you've grown up. You've become such a strong young man. I know you'll take good care of your sisters after you leave, Sebastian. Grace hugged him, and although Sebastian seemed slightly uncomfortable with the touching gesture, he didn't object. Of course, Mom. Grace then hugged Lily. Oh, baby, you look so beautiful. I still remember the day you were born. The first time I held you in my arms. You have bright blue eyes, just like your father. I knew you would be a light in my life, and you still are. Watching Grace say her heartfelt goodbye to Lily and Sebastian, I almost wanted to look away. I felt like I had intruded into a private family moment I shouldn't have been a part of. To some extent, I think I am. Grace hugged me one last time. The hug was brief. She didn't hold me tightly like she had hugged Sebastian and Lily. Clark, she said, I know you didn't want to go, but it'll be a good experience for you, you'll understand. Yes, that is definitely me. Grace nestled back into her father's arms, who gave each of us a faint smile. I hope the three of you will make me proud, he commanded, but without a harsh tone. See you in 3 days, children. Just 3 days. Tishar Sausharars. Siten Sembai Arshafin Jon Utes. Arshu Wen Zio Tian By Mouse Econs. Fei 3 days is nothing. I'll be home in 3 days. I kept this proverb in my mind the whole way, even after I arrived at the airport and fastened my seatbelt. At that time, the thought of being able to go home and sleep in my own bed within 3 days eased my anxiety somewhat. Unfortunately, this was ultimately just an empty consolation. At the time, I didn't realize that I wouldn't be able to go home in 3 days. In fact, I probably wouldn't be able to go home for a long time. If I had known what awaited me in the King of Alfard's palace, I certainly wouldn't have come. I would have done everything in my power, anything at all, to escape the trip. Perhaps I would have feigned illness, or sneaked away for a few days. I'm not sure. It doesn't matter anymore. I didn't realize it at the time, but the moment I set foot on Canadian soil, my fate was sealed. Once I entered his world, there was nowhere to escape, nowhere to hide. He would find me, drag me back, even if I kicked and screamed. As I sat on the plane, contemplating which movie to watch, I had no idea how much my life was about to change.